Welcome to part 2 where we're talking about families of functions, parent functions, domain, and range of different functions. Now there are 4 total families of functions that we're discussing. In the first part we talked about linear functions and quadratic functions. So linear functions normally look like that, or something like that. Could even be a vertical or a horizontal line. And their parent function would be y equals x. We also looked at quadratic functions. So quadratic functions would be, the parent function would be y equals x squared. And we have a couple other kinds of families of functions. Quadratic could either look like a u or an upside down u. Alright, so this top one here, we have a square root function. And this parent function would be y equals the square root of x. And the parent function, y equals the square root of x, that would actually be about like that. But we have one that's been shifted left and down a little bit, so it's a little bit different. And we're going to talk about the domain and the range. So domain is how far we can go left and right and still find a point. Well, as far as we go to the right, since this is extending to the right, we can always find a point out here. If we were to go way out over here, we could still go up and find a point right there. So as far as we go right, we can still find a point. How about left? We can still find one there, but we can't anywhere past there. So if we go left a little bit, we can find a point there, there, there. But as soon as we get down to, looks like -2, right about there, there aren't any other points. So basically our domain will be from -2 all the way this way and continuing on forever in that direction. So the way that we can say that, remember domain is in terms of x. We can say x is greater than or equal to -2, since that's where it starts. So greater than or equal to -2. That means that x could be -2 and we'd find a point. X could be 4 and we'd find a point. X could be 5,287,000 and we'd still find a point. It would be way off the screen to the right. Alright, so state the range of the function. Range has to do with up and down, and it's in terms of y. And now range, if we go up and down, if we go up to 6, we can still find a point way out here. Same thing if we keep going up and up and up. So since the arrow is pointing up a little bit, we're going to assume that it goes on forever, and it does. And we could still, no matter how far we go up on the y-axis, we could still come over and find a point. Now if we go down, we can find a point to there. We can find one there, but we can't if we go anywhere past that. If we go to -4, there's no points out that way, there's no points out that way. So the lowest we can possibly go, based on this, we'll say that that's ending at the point -2, -3. So the lowest we can possibly go is -3. And so it starts at -3 and goes up toward the positive numbers. So we'll say y is greater than or equal to -3. Alright, so as you're taking notes, we want to know how to do the domain and range, how to find those. But then we also want to know the families of functions as well as the parent functions. So make sure that you're taking good notes on that. You'll probably be able to use those notes later on. Alright, last family of functions that we have. There are more families, but this is the last one we're covering, is absolute value. And we've seen absolute value before, where it's an operation where you take two lines and whatever is inside it turns positive. So if we had -2, it would turn to +2. Now the parent function for absolute value is y equals the absolute value of x. So two very tall lines, that way they're not confused as ones. Y equals absolute value of x. And if we were to graph that, it would look like this. But we're not doing that. We're doing this other one where it's shifted over a little bit to the left. So that's not the parent function, but we can still find the domain and range. So domain is how far it goes left and right. Well, if we start at 0, we can find a point there. If we go over to 4, we can find a point there. If we go all the way out over here, follow this up, we can still find a point right up there. So it goes right forever and basically does the same thing on the left side, because we know that we've got an arrow there, so that means it's going on forever. So the domain of this is going to be x is all real numbers. And we talked about this symbol in the last video. It's just an R with an extra line down the left side. And that means that all real numbers, all of these numbers as far as you can go out and as far left as you can go out, those would be part of the domain. The range is how far we can go up and down. Now, if we are at 0, we have a point there. If we go up to 3, we have 2 points. So that one's good. If we go up to 5, we have a point there and a point there. However, if we go down to -1, there's no points anywhere this way. This function only goes up to the right and to the left, so there are no points under 0. So when we write our range, which is always in terms of y is going to be related to 0, and we want all of this stuff. Now all of those numbers are more than 0. So we're going to use the symbol for greater than or equal to, because it can be 0. We do have 1 point at 0. Alright, so make sure that you have answers to each of these questions in your notes so that you can use them on future assignments. You'll have some practice problems. Make sure to ask questions as always. Hopefully you have a good basic understanding of what domain and range are, and what these 4 families of functions are and their parent functions.